there are two things that I think are really important in terms of getting caught in your own path. And one refers to sort of the absolute self, if I could talk about it that way, and the other refers to the finite self, the small self. Meditative traditions, contemplative traditions are very good at helping you reawaken to this ever-present witness or ever-present Maha-Atma, which is Godhead in you. And so basically what you're facing there is ways that you can mess that up. And that sort of remnants of ego get stuck there. The traditions are pretty good at rooting those out. What they're not good at, because they can't see through introspection, is the shadow of the finite self. And there are people that are even relatively well enlightened in certain traditions, but they have shadow elements that are really quite shocking, because there's no way meditation can get at it. So I use several different ways to do it, but one is a process that we developed at an Integral Institute called 3-2-1. And that's where you basically, in the morning, there are two short versions of it. In the morning when you wake up, you just think of a dream. You think of the element in the dream that's the most disturbing. It can be the most attractive, most positive, most negative. And so that's a third person. I remember first person is the person speaking. Second person is the person being spoken to. And third person is the person a thing being spoken about. So in the dream, it starts off as a third person. And it's actually, most psychodynamic theories agree that these elements are parts of your own finite self that you haven't come to terms with. So you've repressed them and projected them, and they appear as other. Mm-hmm. So in the morning, if you simply take one of these elements that are most disturbing and then take it from a third person and just hold it in front of you and talk to it. Now it's a second person. And then just actually feel the energy. There's enormous energy contained in that. It's from your finite self. It's not from your big self. Big self is that in which everything is arising, including the universe. So, but the finite self has split something off from itself, and that shadow element will screw you up all the way to enlightenment and back, because there's no way to get at it. So once you convert it to a second person, then you identify with it. You actually speak from that place to say, I am the monster, or I am this, and so on. And so that's just a very, very good way to remind yourself. It also helps you get out of the victim mode. Because one of the primary ways you get into victim mode is you project some aspect of yourself that you hate, and then it attacks you all the time. You can't figure out why. It's almost always the case. Those things that deeply upset you are those things that you projected your own shadow on. Other people are aware of them. They don't necessarily get upset. Mm. But anything that deeply, deeply irritates the daylights out of you, you're probably facing your own shadow. Mm. And so you project your shadow on that person, and then you have two things you hate. And that double hatred shows up as neurotic symptoms. So you want to take at least one of the hatreds back. And so that's the 3-2-1 process. You can do the same thing then at the end of the day. Simply, when you're going to sleep at night, simply review the day, take some event or thing or person that most upset you, and do the same thing. And it basically keeps your finite self healthy, even while you're trying to transcend it. And if you don't do both of those, you're in a great deal of trouble. Here's where meditation makes it worse. If you split off some aspect of your finite self and you turn it into a third person it, that I'm not angry, but boy, that person sure seems to be angry at me. I don't know why. Because I never get angry at all. And so then you get in meditation and you go, there is anger, there is anger, there is anger. And all it does is increase the dissociation. So meditation increases the dissociative capacity vis-a-vis your own shadow. So it's one of the reasons that people that get deeply involved in meditative practices, particularly if they've been in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all they have left are these enormous shadows. And everything else is sort of gone except the shadows. And if they're teachers, they all get together over lunch and talk about the shadows, which shows that they can bring a great deal of mindfulness to the shadow. They just can't cure it. And then this is one of your, if I have listen to guys talk about the shadow again, I'm going to slip my... So one of the things that want to do meditation, very important, but so the things to do to keep the absolute self straight and things to keep the finite self straight, and you want to try to have at least a practice or two to cover both of those. Yes.
In the way that I teach, which is obviously quite simplistic compared to Ken's perspective, which includes many more dimensions, which for a very important reason I don't include, because I'm trying to get people to look at their own experience in a way that is radically simplistic, but for a very good reason. Um, one of the things see, basically, I'm trying to get people to recognize, number one, that they have an ego. Because often it's something we joke about.
What, me?
Yeah,
It's like
or ego, ha ha ha. Kind of thing.
right.
Okay, and it gets funny up until the point when you actually become deadly serious about really becoming a different kind of person who's transcended it in a way that is significant. That's transcended it in a way that's significant, and that is possible to do. I mean, I don't personally believe it's possible for anybody through the power of their will or even of the highest intentions to transcend ego completely. There apparently has been rare individuals who seem to have accomplished such a feat, but it seems to me anyway that this was really a force of grace or karma or something that just seemed to happen, something just burned out. Okay, but even though it's probably impossible for any individual to do that by the force of will or intention, it's possible to transcend ego to a profound or significant degree, which most people never do. Okay? And that really is possible simply through the power of one's own awakened intention to do so. Okay? It'll be I personally am convinced that it is the hardest thing to do, probably next to letting go of the physical frame at the time of death. I don't think, as far as I can imagine, there'd be anything, as challenging except that. It's the only thing that can come to mind. And this is after really banging away at this for a long time. So the first thing is to get an individual to realize that they have an ego, and if they truly want to evolve in the ways that we've been speaking about here, which most people don't even intend to, but if they truly do, it is a really big problem. So see what I'm saying here? Just getting an individual to take seriously for more than a second the possibility of actually transcending ego to a significant degree is very difficult, because most people don't consider it seriously. A lot of people that I know, and I know that Ken knows, that maybe have been practitioners for many, many years, don't really take seriously the possibility of transcending ego in a significant and profound way. They often think, I'm getting a little better, I'm getting a little better, I'm getting a little better. This is kind of... But so in order to transcend ego in a profound and significant way, if it's not going to happen by itself as an act of grace, it means the individual has to want to do so more than anything else. Now, just getting someone who's an intelligent, sophisticated person to want to transcend their own ego more than anything else for more than 5 seconds is a Herculean task, because it's not something that we really think about. It's not part of our culture, you see? And it's hard for us even to really stay with how important it might actually even be, and not only intellectually but emotionally stay connected to what a big deal it is. So yeah, it's to get people to really see that this thing, that they have an ego, and then begin to pay attention, you see, to what it is. What is the ego, and what does it actually feel like? And one thing I put a tremendous amount of emphasis on is getting people to begin to, as they observe their experience and pay attention to their own experience, not just in a meditative context, but as we just pay attention, once you really get what meditation is, if people get it, but once one really gets it, it's kind of, you're always paying attention. If you know what it is, it's something that you're always doing because you can't help it, because that's who you are. You're paying attention to what your experience is, not because you have to, or because you should, but because you don't have any choice. But if you really are paying attention, then one is going to become aware of the fact that we all have all kinds of unwholesome motives rising within us, right? Some are very unwholesome, okay? Now, it takes a very big heart. It takes a very big heart and and a courageous interest, in higher development, to be able to bear all of that without wincing, without pulling back, without being frightened by one's own darkness. You see, because from a certain point of view, from the perspective of enlightenment itself, or non-duality, you begin to see the saint, your potential to be a saint, and your potential to be a sinner, as being absolutely equal and non-different. And you have to have that kind of equanimity when you, as you observe everything that happens within you. You understand? That kind of equanimity. And get to the point where you're not trying to become a good person. You see? As long as you want to try and become a good person, you're going to be afraid for the wrong reasons of the darker parts of yourself. Right? The idea is you want to be a liberated person, right? A person who is free. Do you understand? And you're going to want to know, in order to be free, you can no longer act out of unconscious motives or so-called impure, darker impulses in a way that's going to have karmic consequences in the world. Right? Because that's going to destroy your confidence. And if you continue to do so and you're in denial of it, it's going to corrupt and divide the self even more so.